Hello everyone, and welcome to the 2016 edition of REMS and Risk Management, a year in review, brought to you by Alpha MD. For those of you who don't know us, Alpha MD is a strategic consulting company specializing in integrated services across pharmaceutical and healthcare organizations. Our service offerings range from data analytics, clinical trial operations, health economics outcome research, and risk management consulting. Our versatile and experienced team comes from a variety of backgrounds, including healthcare systems engineering, risk management consulting, healthcare, pharmaceutical, and financial services. Today, our team brings to you all a review of REMS and risk management in 2016. Today, we will begin with an overview of REMS within 2016. This will include the total cumulative counts, approvals, and a brief highlight of a recent guidance. Next, we will transition into a novel drug approvals of calendar year 2016 as we take a deeper look into the FDA's annual novel drug approval report. As for every year, it is important for us to continue to track the important trends within risk management in order to analyze the current and future industry landscape. Lastly, we will provide a quick preview of our next month's webinar on the transition of PDUFA 5 to PDUFA 6. Let's begin by taking a look at the REMS totals for calendar year 2016. We compile the information and data throughout the year to present to you a comprehensive analysis. On a regular basis, we track the publicly available information on the FDA monthly reports for NDA and BLA approvals, as well as the FDA-approved REMS list. In addition, on an annual basis, we utilize the FDA's report of novel drug approvals. The websites are listed here. Updates and changes to these data sources are common, so we track any and all changes in our REMS directory whenever there are updates to these pages. Once we gather the appropriate data by the end of the calendar year, we analyze and synthesize the allocation of our data into this presentation. Our data is based on the accuracy of the FDA databases and annual reports which are publicly available. It is important to mention that there are usually some special circumstances or exceptions, but I'll highlight those throughout the presentation as necessary. Please keep in mind throughout the presentation a few rules to our analysis. Unless otherwise stated, our counts for what a single REMS is are as follows. One REMS equals any currently approved individual REM. One REMS also can equal a single shared system REMS, and although there are numerous products in total within all the shared systems, we will consider there to be one REMS for each of the shared system. One REMS also includes the count of release REMS. Because the FDA continues to track those products with REMS that have been released of their requirement, we will continue to do the same since our data source is the FDA's approved REMS listing. The information in this presentation is from the collected data through December 31st, 2016. At the conclusion of calendar year 2015, we had a grand total of 76 total REMS. In calendar year 2016, we had 5 new REMS programs being approved, which is inclusive of a new single shared system REMS. That brings us to 68 individual REMS and now 7 single shared system REMS. After a few REMS being released and a few being approved this year, our total for calendar year 2016 comes to 75 total REMS. That is one less REMS program than the previous year. Let's take a quick look and a comparison of the REMS elements of all the current individual REMS from calendar year 2015 and calendar year 2016. This is a breakdown of the percent of REMS with specific REMS elements: medication guide only, medication guide and communication plan only, and elements to assure safe use. Of the 68 active individual REMS, more than half have some combination that includes elements to assure safe use. 21% of the REMS are communication plan based, which is down 2% from last year. The balance includes a small percentage of medication guide and communication plan REMS, which is 6%, which is also down 1% from last year, and medication guide only REMS, 20%, which is actually up 1%. There wasn't much variance when comparing last year to this year. However, we can assume this result on the account of REMS becoming more standardized, which we'll cover later in a few slides. As mentioned previously, there were 5 new REMS programs approved within 2016. In previous years, we saw a few trends or similarities between the products, indications, and/or their risks. This year, there were not any really strong trends to link between these products. One reason for this may be because of the continual growth of single shared system REMS. In other words, as products continue to be classed within a shared system, as well as being as more a standardized approach being taken to consider when a REMS is necessary, we may end up seeing not only less REMS approvals per year, but also less similarities between the products. It is worth mentioning that the majority of REMS approvals over the past couple of years have had a REMS element of elements to assure safe use. This may be a result of truly identifying when a REMS is necessary and not and to not place undue burden on prescribers that may end up limiting access to patients. Keep in mind that as we will revisit this topic in a few slides when we take a look into an FDA guidance that was issued in September. In the meantime, let's take a look at the continued growth of the single shared system REMS. For the first time since the inception of single shared systems, there is now a 7th single shared system at the close of calendar year 2016. The newest addition is the Allosetron shared REMS. If you do recall, in last year's presentation, we did mention that there was for the first time a single shared system REMS that was released of its REMS requirement. So historically, this is now the 8th single shared system in a cumulative perspective. In addition, in the month of January of this year, 2017, a new single shared system has emerged. Even though our year in review is inclusive of the previous year, we still wanted to share with you a quick update that an additional single shared system has emerged during this year. The sodium oxybate single shared system REMS has been created, thus showing the continual trend of REMS standardization. Now, you may have heard the key word of standardization over and over by now. Another step towards REMS standardization came with the issuance of an FDA guidance in September of 2016 titled FDA's Application of Statutory Factors in Determining When a REMS is Necessary. Let's take a quick look into what this guidance provided in relation to REMS standardization. FDA issued a draft guidance in September of 2016 providing statutory factors in determining when a REMS is necessary. FDA's goal for this guidance was to provide clarity and transparency as to the factors they consider for when a REMS is necessary. This continues to show FDA's effort to have REMS become more standardized. In the inception of REMS, we saw an enormous growth in the first few years, followed by an enormous amount of REMS being released of their requirements. If you remember, FDA required FDA to consider the following 6 factors in making a decision about whether to require a REMS. These 6 factors are depicted in depth within the guidance. They will help outline to industry how FDA is approaching when a REMS is necessary, and this type of transparency was non-existent in the early years of REMS, which is why there were so many different viewpoints and angles that sponsors had to determine when submitting an application for drug approval. Many sponsors found themselves committing to a REMS when in reality it was most likely unnecessary. However, the following 6 factors now help industry with a clear resource that was not available in the past. The 6 factors to consider when determining when a REMS is necessary are the seriousness of any known or potential adverse events that may be related to the drug and the background incidence of such events in the population likely to use the drug. Number 2, the expected benefit of the drug with respect to the disease or condition. The third factor, the seriousness of the disease or condition that is to be treated with the drug. The fourth, whether the drug is a new molecular entity. We'll get more on that in just a moment. The fifth, the expected or actual duration of treatment with the drug. And lastly, the 6th factor, the estimated size of the population likely to use the drug. One trend we have continually tracked is the type of REMS being approved. Let's take this one step further and take into account the 6 factors that were mentioned and how the majority of REMS approvals over the past few years having elements to assure safe use compared to what used to be the majority in the early years as medication guide only REMS. We will examine one of this year's REMS approvals as a case study. The Zybrita REMS is one of those all-inclusive or kitchen sink REMS. The reason for this is because of the risk of severe and fatal hepatic injury has always been a major concern to the FDA for good reason. Based on historic benchmarking, we have seen a major trend of products with a risk of severe and fatal hepatic injury have always been approved with a REMS. As we look into the Zybrita REMS, continue to keep in mind the 6 factors as previously mentioned by the guidance. The requirements, first, let's take a look at the healthcare provider and prescribers. They must first successfully complete training, the knowledge assessment, and complete the prescriber enrollment plan. Before the first prescription, the prescriber must also counsel the patient on the risks of severe and fatal hepatic injury and serious immune-mediated disorders and the need for baseline and monthly liver testing using the patient guide. They must also provide the patient with the patient guide and patient wallet card. They must assess the patient's baseline hepatic status as described in the prescribing information. They must then enroll the patient by completing and submitting the patient enrollment form to the REMS program, provide a completed copy of the form to the patient and retain a completed copy in the patient's record. The prescribers must also, on a monthly basis during treatment, assess the patient's hepatic status as described in the prescribing information. Every 90 calendar days during treatment, they must complete a patient status form and submit it to the REMS program. And every 90 calendar days after treatment or discontinuation for 6 months, they must complete a patient status form and submit it to the REMS program as well. At all times, they must report any adverse events suggestive of hepatic injury and immune-mediated disorders to the REMS program. They must also report if any enrolled patient is no longer under their care or has continued therapy to the REMS program. Now on to the patients. The patient requirements for the Zybrita REMS include reviewing the patient guide before the first prescription. They must receive the counseling from the prescriber as previously mentioned on the risks of severe and fatal hepatic injury. And they must be required for baseline and monthly monitoring. They must enroll in the REMS program by completing the patient enrollment form with the prescriber. Patients must get a blood test prior to the first prescription as well as monthly during treatment and monthly after discontinuing for 6 months. On to the pharmacy requirements. To become certified, the pharmacy must designate an authorized representative to carry out the certification process on behalf of the pharmacy. They must also have the authorized representative review the program overview, train all relevant staff involved in dispensing Zybrita on the program requirements using the program overview. They must establish processes and procedures to verify the pharmacy obtains authorization to dispense and dispenses no more than 1 month supply to a patient at a time. They must also have the authorized representative enroll in the REMS by completing the pharmacy enrollment form. Before dispensing, they must obtain authorization to dispense by calling the REMS program or accessing the REMS program website. They must also ensure that they will not dispense more than 1 month's supply. At all times, if the pharmacy designates a new authorized representative, they must re-enroll in the REMS program. They must also report any adverse events suggestive of hepatic injury and immune-mediated disorders to the REMS program. They must maintain records of training and maintain records that all processes and procedures are in place and are being followed. They must also cooperate with audits carried out by the REMS program to ensure that all processes and procedures are in place and are being followed. These audits are not new. They're not something that we are unaware of, as other REMS programs have similar audits conducted. The decision of approving this product with a REMS is a great example of the 6 factors that help determine that a REMS was necessary for this product. Let's transition to the novel drug approvals of 2016. Again, keep in mind that one of those 6 factors were to determine whether the drug was a new molecular entity or novel approval. Every year, the FDA publishes a report of the calendar year's novel drug approvals. A few interesting statistics were depicted within this year's summary. Novel drug approvals in total were below the 10-year average of 30. In calendar year 2016, there were 22 novel drug approvals. 36% were as first in class, which is one indicator of the innovative nature of a drug. These drugs often have mechanisms of action different from those existing therapies. 9 of the 22 novel drugs approved in 2016, or 41%, were approved to treat rare or orphan diseases that affect 200,000 or fewer Americans. This is significant because patients with rare diseases often have few or no drugs available to their conditions. 36% were designated by CDER as Fast Track. Fast Track speeds new drug development and review, for instance, by increasing the level of communication FDA allocates to drug developers and by enabling CDER to review portions of a drug application ahead of the submission of the complete application. A drug receives priority review if CDER determines that the drug could potentially provide a significant advance in medical care. The drug is reviewed within 6 months instead of the standard 10 months. 15 of the 2016 novel drugs, or 68%, were designated with priority review. Although not depicted above, FDA also has an accelerated approval program and allows for early approval of a drug for a serious or life-threatening illness that offers a benefit over current treatments. CDER approved 6 of the 2016 novel drugs, 27%, under this accelerated approval program. This approval is based on a surrogate endpoint, for example, a laboratory measure, or other clinical measure that we may consider reasonably likely to predict a clinical benefit of the drug. Once accelerated approval is granted, the drug must undergo additional testing to confirm that benefit. This speeds the availability of the drug to patients who need it. These statistics can be interpreted that FDA understands the importance and is following through on their commitments when it comes to drug approvals where there are unmet needs or a drug that can be innovative yet still safe. 16 of the novel drugs in 2016, or 73%, were designated in one or more expedited categories of fast track, breakthrough, priority review, and/or accelerated approval. Each of these designations helps expedite the speed of the development and/or the approval process and is designed to help bring important medications to the market as quickly as possible. CDER approved 21 of the novel drugs of 2016, or 95%, on the first cycle of review, meaning without requests for additional information that would delay approval and lead to another cycle of review. Comparing approval to other countries offers another measure of approval efficiency. Although regulatory processes differ widely between FDA and those of regulatory agencies in other countries, 86% were approved in the United States before receiving approval in any other country. That's 19 of the 22. A predictability element has accompanied novel drug approvals recently. This shows the effort and attention shown to novel drug approvals, bringing necessary and much needed access to novel therapies. A summary of all novel drug approvals and their elements of expedited review methods are depicted here. This matrix comes directly from the 2016 Novel Drug Approval Report and helps depict and summarize all 22 novel drugs along with specific criteria such as first-in-class, orphan or rare diseases, fast track, breakthrough therapies, priority review, accelerated approvals, whether the PDUFA goals were met, first cycle, and first approved in the U.S. Throughout the year, CDER was able to meet or exceed most PDUFA goal dates for application review, agreed to with the pharmaceutical industry and approved by Congress. This past year, CDER met its PDUFA goal dates for 95% of the novel drugs approved. So what did we continually see as a trend in 2016, and what main conclusions have we arrived to? We know that a systematic approach is being taken to novel drug approvals and that the FDA also continues to move the needle on taking a standardized approach to how products are being reviewed when it comes to approving them with a REMS requirement. We have also seen a predictability element when it comes to novel drugs being approved. What does that mean? It means that drug and therapy access is of great importance, especially when it is indicated to treat a rare or orphan disease, or if it may be a first-in-class therapy. Since this importance is placed on access, FDA is willing to grant expedited and prioritized review of novel medicines. A continuing upward trend for the annual number of CDER's novel drug approvals relies on a corresponding increase in the number of drug applications submitted for approval. During the past decade, submissions of applications for new molecular entities and novel biologic license applications by the pharma and biotech industry have remained relatively stable. More than the quantity of novel drugs approved in 2016 are the qualities of the new drugs the pharmaceutical industry has developed and the important roles these drugs are serving to advance medical care. Also, noteworthy is the efficiency with which most of these drugs were reviewed and approved. CDER used a variety of expedited development and review regulatory tools in an effort to help speed these drugs to market, in all cases while striving for efficiency of review and approval of applications for new drugs. CDER maintains its rigorous standards for demonstration of effectiveness and safety in the process. One personal conclusion I have come to is that both regulators and industry are starting to or continuing to look at risk and risk management as an opportunity more than as a threat, by prospectively anticipating and addressing risks and how they will be managed ahead of time, rather than at the time of action. Please join us next month as we continue our web series to take a deeper look into these final months of PDUFA 5 and what remains on the agenda, as well as an outlook of PDUFA 6 and a review of all the meetings that have previously conducted on the timeline for PDUFA 6 reauthorization. It has been my pleasure to present this annual edition of REMS and Risk Management, a Year in Review. If you have any questions or would like to obtain a copy of the slides that were presented today, contact us and we will gladly answer questions and provide you a copy of the slides. In addition, if you have an idea for a web series or topic, or would like to be a guest speaker, please feel free to contact us as well. Thank you all for your time and have a wonderful day.